So, Rahim, welcome today.
Thank you again for having me
You're
on the
very
different
welcome.
side of the couch this time.
I know. I'm excited. We're putting you in the hot seat today.
I know.
Today is all about getting to know you as a co-host. And
Thank you.
I know I'll have to be careful of what I ask because maybe one day you'll ask me in return.
Yeah, I'm taking mental notes, Caroline.
So I want to get to know Rahim.
All right. So I think my story wouldn't be complete if we went all the way back. And I think this is probably the most interesting part about me as Rahim is I grew up born and raised in East Africa. So Tanzania, where a lot of people will be familiar with the national game parks, and that was not very far away from my home. So I spent the first 10, 11 years of my life in Tanzania, and it was awesome because I got to so many memories I have from that part of my childhood. We moved to Canada in the early 90s. We had family here who sponsored us. So I grew up in Toronto. High school was in Toronto. Went to University of Waterloo, where I took economics and finance. And then my career kind of started in early 2000s. Probably not the best time to be getting into finance right after the tech market crash, but it gave me pretty good perspective. Personally, I'm married with 7, 3, and a 1-year-old, so it's a busy time for my wife and I, but it's a lot of fun, and it's amazing to raise 3 little boys. I'm trying to get them into sports. They're not that good right now,
Gotta give it some time.
yeah, maybe with time and with some coaching, but I don't want to pressure them too much. I grew up playing a lot of individual and team sports, so every dad, without being too cliche, has that vision of their kid walking onto the court of a NBA Finals game, but we know how unlikely that is. Yeah.
Well, you never know.
Yeah.
So if I went to Tanzania, what should I do? What's the first thing on my bucket list?
Oh, bucket list. It's easy. It's the Serengeti National Park. So I grew up in a town, second biggest town called Mwanza. Dar es Salaam would be what most people will be very familiar with. So you would land there, you take a local flight over to Mwanza, and then you would go into the Serengeti. And for anyone who is remotely fascinated by animals, that is a bucket list trip. So there's one, and then there's also Mount Kilimanjaro. So if you're a hiker and a climber, I would say it's one of the major peaks out there. So you could do that. If you like beaches, there's a little island called Zanzibar. Have you heard of Zanzibar?
I have.
Yeah, so the joke in our community is we don't need Bali, we kind of have Zanzibar. So we go there, and it would be a great place to relax, stay on the water in those huts. So I'd say those are the 2-3 things that I would do.
Awesome.
So yeah.
Growing up with animals, I'm picturing now Rahim as the elephant whisperer turned into group retirement whisperer.
Oh boy, we took a deep turn, and it got a lot more boring, a lot quicker. I like the elephant whisperer better.
Exactly. Yeah. So these days you got 3 young boys, having them grow up with your wife. That's a busy life for sure.
It is.
So what do you do for fun these days?
My kids are fun. No, if they're listening, or my wife is listening, not to say they're not fun, but what do I do really for fun? I would say I love the spring, the summer, and fall, because golf. So I'm not amazing, but I do love the sport, and it's been something I've been hooked to ever since I started my career. In about 2010, I joined Manulife, and as a business development manager covering GTA West, covering a lot of advisors, my boss said, "Look, we're giving you this job, but we're taking it away if you're not going to golf." So they were joking, but golf is such a big part of our industry, and I don't think it has anything to do with it being a snobbish sport as it's labeled. I think it's the ability to you have 4 hours with someone, you get to really hang out with them, get to know them, And the best part is there's so many ups and downs. You get to learn about their temperament. So if you're making notes on, on who you're selling to or who your friends are, you get them at their happiest and at their absolute weakest. So
You definitely get insights. And
you do.
I'm drawing a parallel because I will confess to you that often some of my first dates have been golf games. For that reason, you get to
not
know.
a lot of second dates after playing golf with someone.
You get to know the temperament and how they handle themselves. But no, very true. You get to chat about something while doing something fun, right? Get to know someone. Awesome. So how did you end up through your schooling, get to focus in on finance and then ultimately get into the business you're in today?
I promise this is not rehearsed. It's completely authentic. I had a guidance counselor in high school say, look, if you want to make your life easier to get a job after university, the best thing to do is find a school that has a co-op program. So at that time, we're talking about 1998-ish. I had a lot of friends who were at Waterloo in engineering or comp sci, which was not my interest at all, but they were all in co-op programs. So while I was in, I don't know, our audience, I'm not sure if they'll remember, but in Ontario, you had OAC, which is the extension of, your grade 12 year. And hearing and living through what they were experiencing, which is co-op terms, they were able to go to school for a term, get a job, make money, get experience. And I found that to be very compelling and very appealing. So I applied to York, U of T, Waterloo. I got accepted into Waterloo, into the co-op stream, which allowed me to have work and go to school at the same time. And my last placement, funny enough, I did find the job myself while I was at school, but was with a company called Invesco Trimark. At that time, it was AIM Funds, which was an American mutual fund company, and I got a job processing in the back office. So when you have a change in your investment option, at that time the trades weren't done electronically, so you'd get a paper copy of a transaction. I want to go from this fund to this fund, or I want to change my address or my beneficiary. We were processing those transactions on the back end. And that co-op term ended. I graduated and I got a call from AIM Trimark offering me a full-time job, which was amazing because that led me to work for an investment firm. And I started grassroots completely, which was on the phones. So my job was advisors calling in. It was an advisor call center, and they want to know about the products, client information. So I really started from the grassroots at Invesco Trimark, and then I branched out into the group pension world. In 2007, I went to Industrial Alliance, spent a few years there, went to Manulife, spent about 8 years there, and the last 6 years on the consulting side with Penmore. So it kind of all just authentically flowed. I got lucky along the way with a lot of great mentors who helped me pave my career path. If I could give advice to a high schooler today, it'd be listen to your guidance counselors. They know what they're talking about, and find a mentor, because talking to people, especially people who've been there, they can really guide you and you'll be better for it.
Why do you think at the end of your co-op, what did they see in you to call you and right away offer that full-time job?
I have no idea. Worst case scenario, they called 5 people, 4 didn't pick up. I was the 5th I picked up. There could be that, or
very responsive.
Yeah, or maybe I did something right in that co-op term. You have to give it your best, especially when this could be a potential full-time employer. So I was pretty focused in my work during that term, and as I said, I got lucky. They called. 90% of the time, it doesn't work out where you did co-op at a company and they be your future employer. It doesn't work that easily, but I got lucky, and I'm thankful for that.
What would you say really sparked your interest to be in the group retirement side of things? What drew you there?
It was luck. When I was at Invesco Trimark, I had applied for a few jobs that I didn't get. And it was a kind of a knock on the ego. And the authentic story is that I was looking for jobs and I ended up finding a posting for Industrial Alliance. And the posting was very curious. Anybody who is in the group retirement space knows of a role called financial education specialist. And the neat thing about that posting was you were required to travel. And as a young person, that was very appealing. I remember the posting literally said, you will get your own BlackBerry. Right. So I was all in.
It wasn't Palm Pilot. It was BlackBerry.
No, it was after the Palm Pilot. It was you were getting your own BlackBerry, you got your own laptop, you get to travel. And it almost felt like, do jobs like this exist? Because I came from the individual world where, I was on the phones, I became a marketing person, I was training staff on products. So very office oriented job, to a job where I could do everything. I could be in the office. It was a brand new field, but also very relatable, right? In our world, plan members have to invest their money if they're in a defined contribution type of a plan, which most new plans are. I could carry over all of the things that I learned on the individual wealth side, transfer them to the group environment and get a brand new skill. So it was by luck I ran into this posting, and I remember being interviewed in a huge cafeteria, Industrial Alliance, their Dundas and University building. Anybody who knows that building is pretty iconic. It's been around for a very long time. And it's a big cafeteria. We were in a little corner, and they were insane enough to hire me. And I was IA's first financial education specialist. That role didn't exist for them. It was something brand new. It was great. I really enjoyed that gig.
So I'm curious, what to be the first education specialist, how did they test that? What was the hardest question they asked you that you had to explain? Do you remember?
Yeah, I think the entire premise of the job was, okay, we know you have the technical background on the investment side, but how are you going to appeal to a bunch of people? So financial education specialist, the role is to go to the client site and educate plan members, right? And some plan members' education sessions could be done in a boardroom, which is a nice experience, but sometimes you're in the back room in a warehouse on a projector with 50, 100 people. They're asking you questions. It gets rowdy. They're egging one another on. And how are you going to be composed? Are you going to be able to speak in front of a group of people? Are you going to be able to manage those nerves? So I think they were looking for that. And lucky enough, when in today's university programs, you go through that coaching of presentation training. So I was pretty comfortable with that. I was also a trainer at Invesco Trimark prior to that job. So I was in a facilitator capacity before. So it wasn't anything brand new for me. So I think I had a lot of transferable skills to be able to do that job. I wouldn't say on day one, but I was up and running quite quick.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I'm seeing the birth of your career path here and why you are so passionate about this industry, right? To educate people to understand, especially when we look at, the mental, physical, financial wellness of Canadians, you need to understand even the products that you're buying and what you're looking at. So I'm thinking that we shift gears now.
Sure.
And look at Rahim's top 5 lessons learned over the years as you educate. Let's start with plan sponsors, your typical small, mid-sized business owner that you meet day in, day out. What are some of the questions you get there as you're entering into deciding whether to put a program in place and what should those products be? How do you line that up?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, and plan sponsors, especially small, medium business owners, they are no different than a large corporation. And the reason why I say that is they do have a little bit of a disadvantage. The biggest thing any client is worried about, and the thing that sticks out the most, is how do I hire the best people? How do I keep my superstars, right? So I think that's the premise. That's where most conversations start. And you have to understand. So I'll give you an example. You have a small, medium-sized technology company, and they are fighting for talent versus Shopify, Amazon, Microsoft, Alphabet. That's a tough go, right? They're not publicly traded. They can't offer equity on day one. They can't pay the highest dollar. So how do they get equivalent talent? So the ways in which they can do it is they can have better culture, more flexibility, but the tangible components would be having attractive retirement and benefits programs. So we help, and when we're consulting for these clients is, they have to be open enough to understand if they're fighting for talent, it is going to be costly, so they're going to need the program. So that's kind of what I call, the quote unquote selfish motivation, right? Is how do I have my business grow? And you need people. How do I get people on? You need rewards, whether it's salary or programs. But the secondary element of most of these business owners is they tend to be family organizations, right? Or a founder who really, really cares about their employees. These employees are not just a number. So you're not, and no disrespect to big organizations where you have 20,000 people, you don't have that personal touch. Mm-hmm. So these employers know their employees intimately. They know their kids' names and birthdays, and they have a sense of paternalism for these employees. They want these employees with good outcomes at retirement. So I've had business owners say, look, my bad. I have people who have been here for 20 years. I have not helped them at all formally towards their retirement savings. Yes, I make CPP contributions. Yes, they're paid well, but there isn't a formal program that they can rely on. We have a 3-tiered pension system. So you have CPP Old Age Security, which is your Social Security bucket. Then you have personal savings. That's your second bucket. And your third bucket is retirement savings from your group plan, from your corporate plan. And a lot of these employers don't have that, and they truly want to help their employees meet a better retirement outcome, right? So they're coming from a competitive position as well as a good, hearted way where they want to help their employees save for retirement. So that would be another reason why they're looking to, if they haven't already done it, how do I get started and help my employees truly save for retirement, have these funds earmarked exclusively for retirement?
Yeah, no, it speaks to the culture. Like you said, you're small to mid-sized business, you're day in, day out, you have people you're side by side, and it's social functions where you're going to get to know their families, and you see that impact of whether it's health, financial, wealth, all of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, when someone's designing something for the first time, what are some of the key questions you ask them to help figure out line up the value system with the actual program, right? Because there's so many levers you can pull in a retirement plan.
The question that I ask is, where do you want to be with your retirement program, right? And what I mean by that, are you benchmarking from a, relative basis with a set of organizations where you're trying to get talent from? So if you are a auto manufacturing company, are you making a plan that's in line with, the Hondas and the Toyotas, because that's where you're trying to find talent? So benchmarking is a key component. Cost projections are a big component. So helping them figure out and be true with, what does your program need to be? Is it going to be impactful if you have a 25th percentile program? It's not really going to do anything for you. No one's coming to work for you for a program just because it's a namesake program. So do you want it to be impactful? Is one thing we ask. We help prepare them from a cost perspective. So, any owner is going to have their finance people be in there because they need to budget for these items. So we help them from a budget perspective. And then on the investment side, there's a lot of philosophical questions with respect to what kind of investment options you want to make available for your plan members, whether you want to give them everything and help them figure it out, let them figure it out, or do you want to curate a menu of funds that's going to be easy for plan members to make those investment decisions? We have to remember these plan members who are ultimately going to be beneficiaries of the program, they don't have the knowledge for the most part, right? So you want to make things relatively easy, but you don't want to compromise on the quality of the investment options. Yeah. In our prior podcast, we had Alex and Jonathan from Commonwealth talk about governance.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. So plan sponsors have been programmed to think that retirement programs are complex. And a lot of times they haven't done anything because they don't have the manpower. They'll say to us, well, I know pension plans, listening to the news and reading things is very hard, complex to monitor, and all right? It's intimidating for them. So we don't want to say they don't have governance responsibilities. They do, but what we want to say is as a consulting community, they're delegating a lot of that to us or over to the record keepers. Yes, you have the ultimate responsibility from a quote unquote law perspective, but you can delegate a lot of that complexity. So whether you have 2 people managing the retirement program or a small team, and you may not be experts in this, you could still run and administer the program because you have a good consultant who knows what they're doing. You've partnered with a great record keeper who has the systems and the processes in place, and you have high quality asset managers on your platform. You combine that with education, you've given the average plan member a platform where they'll be successful towards retirement. So I'd say the governance part, there's lots of questions. How do I design a program that's going to be effective for my retaining and attracting needs? And how do I help my people get towards a retirement? Because I really care about them.
Perfect. So ballpark, as a small to mid-sized business owner, percentage of payroll, approximately what could I spend to get something decent in place?
Oh, that is a loaded question. And this is not meant to be a cop-out, but I'll give a shout out to Sun Life, for example. They do a really good, I think it's every other year, they publish a report called My Design for Saving. So it's a benchmarking report. Yep. They do a really good job of breaking down what their block of business looks like from an industry perspective. Mm-hmm. So if I have a mining firm who wants to create a program, we not only can look at the entire universe of every organization out there, but we can focus their attention to their sector, right? And within their sector, you can break it down by, well, am I a startup mining firm, just have shovels in the ground and I only have 50 people? What's my ramp up schedule going to be? Am I going to be competing with an organization that has thousands of lives? Or am I going to be relatively small? So Sun Life's data is not only broken down by the industry, but also by the number of people within your organization. So those types of aids, you can help the client figure out what type of program they want to have. Do they want to be benchmarking versus a specific industry? Do they want it to be wider based? So your question was percentage of payroll, for example. So if you look at all that data, and if you look at a distribution chart, the mean is going to be between 3 and 5% matching. Okay. So think about the average plan would be plan member puts in 3% of their base salary, and the plan sponsor would match that 3%. Tails tend to be quite long. So you could have industries like technology and material. So let's say mining organizations tend to have more generous plans, because if you're going to ask someone to go, 500 feet below ground in a mine site, you probably need to compensate them with better salary, better program. Some organizations tend to be, 7, 8, 9% matching. And you also on the other side have some that are just starting up and they do the bare minimum. In a pension plan, that would be, for example, 1% employer contribution. But the midpoint would be, 3, 4, 5 would be a great program.
Got it. Yeah. So let's go to the other end of the spectrum. You've helped put a plan in place, and I'm just really curious to see, given that you were one of the first education specialists, what is your best advice to help an employer educate and communicate to their employees and really engage them to invest and participate in the program?
Cater to the lowest common denominator. Mm-hmm. So assume your plan members don't know anything, right? Which means you really have to start all the way and make it very basic. So you need to explain how the program works. You want to explain the benefits of the program and what it means to the average employee 30 years from now. So one of the things that we would do in our education sessions at Penmore is highlight the fact that if you put in $1,000 a year, for example, and your employer matches that, what does that mean for you 20 years from now, right? Because in the beginning, numbers are small, right? $100 a pay, $50 a pay. So the opportunity cost isn't highlighted. But when you extrapolate the math and you show them what their investment today will mean for them 20, 30 years down the road, now the opportunity cost of not participating is large. Like, by not participating because you can't afford it today, are you willing to forego hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? So we educate on what it means to invest and be a part of the program. Another really important component is, unfortunately, most plan sponsors are not offering their employees a defined benefit plan, meaning a promise at retirement. So in those types of plans, the plan member doesn't have to worry about how am I going to invest, right? They have a benefit. The risk on the investment side is borne on the plan sponsor. But most plans today that our clients are going to be putting in are defined contribution programs, right? So they're going to define how much they're going to give, but the investment risk and what the amount will be for the plan member is the plan member is going to have to invest those dollars. So a lot of time should be spent on understanding the investment options, how they work, how comfortable you are with respect to the risk that each asset manager takes. So the phases would be, I know what my plan is. I know how to maximize that plan. I know how it works day to day. And now how do I invest that money, right? But I don't want to forget about it. I want to make sure I come back to it year over year because my risk level may change, right? My beneficiary may need to be updated. So the education is not a one-time event. Education is continuous, which what makes it more powerful, right? So as a consultant, whether you're doing it on your own or you're partnering with a record keeper, in our industry, it's best practice to do education every year. So you're catching new employees, but the people that have been working with these organizations, they're coming to these sessions year after year, and you kind of start rudimentary and introductory, but you build on education and you make it more sophisticated. And you could see these employees who've been attending your sessions year over year be so thankful because they've learned a lot. Quick anecdote, and hopefully this is not boring, but I did an education session about a year ago, and I had a plan member come to me after the session, and she said, you used to educate us when I used to work for another organization. And at first I'm like, no, I don't buy that. But she gave me the name of the employer. You know, she described what we had talked about. And I think you make an imprint on people's lives as a consultant and in a position where you're educating people, because we take so many things for granted, where the average employee who has a job at a warehouse or they're a computer programmer, they're not paying attention to their retirement savings daily.
It's not their wheelhouse. Right?
No, it's not their wheelhouse. But if they're going to be spending 25, 30 years of their life in retirement, right, that's a long time. So you need to make sure you're laying the foundation today. You've saved enough, because we know, no knock on our Social Security system, it's amazing, one of the best in the world, but it wasn't designed to be your entire retirement savings, right? It was meant to be a portion of it, and a lot of it is you supplementing that. So I think once you click those two things with the average plan member, they tend to realize that tend to pay more attention to it.
Yeah. No, that's a great tip. I mean, for any advisors that are out there listening to this as well, right? It just shows you education is key. It's memorable. It's impactful. It's going to make a difference.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
I remember even in my first employer being, I had no clue about all the investments, the funds, but again, they put the paperwork in front of me and thank goodness they did and said, you're going into this and here's the benefit. And they gave me some guidance because, you don't have the confidence in it at the time. But,
and you know what? We've come such a long way in the industry from paper tools to things being fully electronic, and you could almost guide the plan members' enrollment journey to make sure they're going through all the necessary steps. So not only are they enrolling, but they're signing up for the website, they're building their mini retirement program. And through technology, you can control that chain of enrollments. And even on the investment side, 10 years ago, or maybe 10 years ago, we just started getting them. But 15 years ago, you didn't have a target date fund, which is meant for set it and forget it. I know I mentioned, we want to come back every year. We don't want to set it and forget our retirement plan, but the investment component of it can be done today and forget about it, and then the asset manager is controlling the asset allocation of that investment throughout your career. So we've come a long way from a technology perspective in our world on the investment side and on the tool side. So things are a lot easier today to have control of your financial wellness versus 15 years ago when you and I would have entered our first retirement program.
It's come a long way since just the BlackBerry days.
Hey, BlackBerry to, I'm not going to mention what phone I'm using right now. I know that people have their Android and iPhone OS rivalries, like it really means something, but yes, we've come a long way.
Yeah, right on. Well, I think where I want to kind of, as we wind things up here, and we might do some future episodes on this, I'd love to hear what's currently out there in the marketplace that's kind of, speaking of advancement, the products that are out there. I'm hearing about, student loan products, mortgage products, different types of savings plans for different purposes that appeal to your stage in life. So maybe in brief, if you want to describe what you see out there, and I think we might do some future episodes on these.
Yeah, I think in the group space, there's a lot. Anything you can get as a individual customer, a retail customer, you can get now on the institutional side. So whether it's an RESP or a tax-free savings account, or just a traditional non-registered plan, an RSP, like all of those tax-assisted vehicles or the secondary, tertiary vehicles are available. They may not all be available through your plan sponsor because the company may be tactical in what they offer and what they don't offer. But a lot of the record keepers are, helping people pay for their student loan, for example. And I gave a, shout out to Sun Life. So I should give a shout out to Canada Life as well. They have RESP solutions and, kind of the loan repayment solutions. If I'm not mistaken, they have that as well. But one of the things that all carriers do is, man, I'm just a little mold here because now I'm going to go to Manulife. They have a really good solution called the Financial Wellness Assessment. So it's an assessment as a plan member. You answer 15, 20 questions, and I don't know if it's artificial intelligence is the right word of what the software will do for you is it will tell you where you're weak at. So depending on how you answer the questions, do you have a budget? Do you know where your money is going? They'll recommend your 3-4 areas of focus. So we have these unbelievable tools that are free that aid you in building your entire financial wellness. And then you have the repayment for your student loan programs or helping your kids save through an RESP or a TFSA or the FHSA, which is a new program. I haven't seen that come out right now on the group side.
First time home.
Yeah, so I think that program will eventually make its way out. The group retirement world focuses, for the most part, and rightfully so, on the main plan. And the main plan would be, whether it's your RSP, DPSP, or RSP alone or your pension plan. That's the most focus. I think some plan sponsors are reluctant to offering additional products. They may feel their employees could just self-serve individually on their own. But there are some plan sponsors who are saying, no, if I could have my employees' lives be easier because they can contribute through payroll deductions, some do it as well. So to answer your questions, yes, a wide variety of products available, even on the group side that we didn't have 5-10 years ago.
Awesome. So I'd say, probably to wind things up, when I think about your young boys, you said 3 kids under 7, advice to them, or how do you explain, daddy is the elephant whisperer, and when they get into the, they start their lives, and their
Right.
young lives and their career, how do you help set them up for financial wellness and education and understanding? What are some of the couple of baby steps
Ooh,
you would do?
we're getting deep
I know.
and
I love
emotional.
it.
So I'll tell you one thing, it's very difficult.
Mhm.
I'm not going to hide it. So I'll rewind a little bit. My parents as immigrants in the 90s who came from middle class East Africa, they had to get jobs, entry level jobs in the 90s. It wasn't easy then. I think we were going through a little recession.
Yep.
So I grew up in a household where every dollar was accounted for. And it was taught to me by my parents that money doesn't grow on trees and you need to plan and you need to have a budget and things are pretty serious because if you don't have a plan, we may not be able to pay rent or you're not getting your allowance and you're not buying lunch at school, right? So my roots were very different than things are for me. And not to say by any means that I'm just spending like uncontrollably, but you in Canada, having grown up here and had a good work history here, if I buy something by way of example, for my kids, it's, oh, you bought this, you bought this, you bought this, so why can't I have it, right? So it's that much harder to teach my kids save, control yourselves if I'm not doing it. So I need to do a way better job of ingraining in them. But we do have tips. They do have a limit on what they can buy in a given month. So we stick by those. They don't know that they're living up to a budget, but they are.
Mm-hmm.
They are, right? So you don't want to completely turn them off. Kids need to be kids, and if they want a lollipop or a candy, it's okay. But big ticket items for my 7-year-old who can kind of understand, he knows if he's spent his Christmas money in January, there's nothing till the next month, and we are very strict when it comes to that, and it's for their own self-benefit. And another anecdote, and this is a true story. My son last week comes to me in the middle of a store at a point of sale. I'm tapping my debit card and buying something. He says to me, "Does money ever run out of that thing?" And I looked at him like, is that the impression we are giving them by tapping? Like it's nothing, there's no when you're parting with cash, I don't know about you, but when I'm parting with a $20 bill versus tapping for it, the psychology is different. So I thought that was pretty interesting, and I need to do better. I need to better in terms of practice what I preach. I would say we can all get better in teaching the next generation. But they do a pretty good job even in school of telling them the value of money, even though he's very young. So I would say, little tips and tricks, doing a little budget for them and making sure they're following that without even them knowing they're on a budget. So
Yeah.
I'm trying. My kids are a little bit young, but I think it'll get really hard once they, go to high school and things like that. But yeah, those are some of the simple things that my wife and I are doing for our kids.
No, I like it. Good advice. I mean, I agree. In this generation and the next generation within Canada, financial literacy is important. It's got to start with your kids and how you choose to teach and help them understand that value. Because there was something about pulling out your wallet and
100%.
counting the money to see if you had enough to buy in the moment what you wanted. Tap is super easy, right? I can relate. I've got a 16-year-old daughter who's definitely a better fashion shopper than I am. And I've kind of came up with this, along the way is if she needs something, I will buy it for her, like the pair of running shoes, right? $80. If I'll spend $80. If she wants the $200 pair, I tell her she has to pay the difference.
Right.
So, that helps her kind of weigh choices and options, right? And I'm not saying I'm perfect at it either. Like I'm going along the way, and everybody's got a Visa card. You slap.
Yeah, I gotta tell you, the shoes are just out of control. Like as someone who wants to collect here and there, a pair of Jordans for a kid should not cost $200. I'm sorry, that's insane. There's a part of me that says, imagine every time you went to tap, you had a little image that says, this $100 20 years from now is going to be worth 20 grand. Are you sure you want to buy? But you can't live your entire life with that opportunity cost in mind. But an occasional reminder would be really, really good. So in financial wellness, as you said, there's so many great tools, vendors that are out there that are spending a lot of time on financial wellness. So it is something as an industry we're getting really good at.
Awesome. All right, final question.
Yes.
I always ask people this. I love this question. Looking back on your career, what you do today, the work you do with Penmore related to Benefits Alliance, what's your one aspect you're most proud of in your career of accomplishing?
Great question. I think the anecdote that I mentioned earlier is the impact that you have on the everyday individual. So when you work for a corporation, there's all kinds of accolades, awards, raises, advancement in your career. That's great, right? But the satisfaction of meeting someone in an education session who tells you, I remember you 3 years ago at my other job where you did this for us, and I really appreciated it, and it really helped kind of course or chart my savings journey. You can't beat that. Like that you are literally helping someone. And in our world, it's not like you can cook a Thanksgiving meal for someone and help them. This is our way of giving back. So without sounding insanely cliche, I think for me, the human element of actually helping real people with their retirement savings is something that's amazing about this job.
Awesome. Well, I've just got my final answer as to why you do this podcast with us. I can see the passion of making that difference. It's coming through, Rahim. And thank you so much for coming and
thank you for having me.
Opening up your life and your career to me and to our podcast listeners.
Hopefully, our audience are not in a deep snore by now.
No. They're thinking about a lot of what you said today. I'm sure of it.
Thank you for having me, Caroline. Right. Thank you.
So today's episode, I had the pleasure of getting to know my co-host, Rahim Peera. Thank you for coming. We've learned a lot about financial literacy, the passions which born your career, and how you translate that to employers, employees, and even your kids. This has been the Benefits Alliance Voice. Thank you for listening. Go wherever you listen to your podcasts, recommend it, like it, and share it with your friends. Let us know what else you want to hear about.